Judeo on October 18th, and then Daniel Dean on November 1st. Please take a look at those, and we'd love to see you here. And then Jenny has one more announcement before we start.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Jenny Lin, Director of the MA Program in Curatorial Practices, and we're thrilled to have Charlene Liu here tonight, and she will also be participating in an event called Taipei Night, taking place this Saturday at the USC Pacific Asia Museum. So check out the Roski events for more details about that. And now, without much further ado, I am going to introduce our introducers of Charlene, our MA student Lena Wong, and our MFA student Camille Chi. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. Again, my name is Lena Wang.
And my name is Camille CNC.
So tonight's Roski talk, we are introducing Charlene Liu. Charlene Liu was born in Taiwan and raised in American Midwest. She's an artist and educator based in Oregon. Charlene Liu received her BA from Brandeis University and MFA in Visual Arts from Columbia University. She is now a professor of art and printmaking at the University of Oregon, where she also worked in various roles as the department head of art, acting director of the School of Art and Design, and associate dean of the College of Design.
Charlene's work engages themes of cultural hybridity, heritage and landscape by combining painting, collage, pen and ink, papermaking and printmaking techniques. She brings together diverse visual references drawn from plant life, food culture, textile patterns, East Asian art object and landscape. Her work creates vibrant layered compositions that combines abstract and figurative forms. Her work has also been exhibited widely and included in the Judith Rothschild Contemporary Drawing Collection at the Museum of Modern Art, the Altoid Collection at the New Museum, and at the Tacoma Art Museum.
Today, Charlene is going to introduce her work from the past 10 years addressing East Asian cultures and elements of qipao dress, food, and immigration by using diverse creative media. So,
now let's welcome Charlene for her presentation.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And we had a really nice chat last week, and I asked some pretty great questions that I had to think about. And thank you to Jenny Lin and USC for inviting me tonight. It's always great to be able to take a look at your work and put together a lecture. I'm going to be focusing on my work in the past about 6 to 10 years. I do have a lot of images to go through, but we'll keep it to 45 minutes. And we'll talk about my process, my techniques, my materials, and experiences that shape my practice, which also includes teaching. I have some former students in the audience today and some friends, which I'm really excited about. I go back and forth between different ways of working and related bodies of work, so it really does span from painting, printmaking, to the drawing practice. I think of myself as a maker of images, using all these different processes. That includes watercolor and pastels and handmade paper. I also teach printmaking, so it becomes very integral to my practice, which I'm going to talk about. I often think of my work within the genre and tradition of landscape painting and still lives. Drawing from the environment around me, the interior decor, objects, nature, and in this case, I'm really inspired by the Pacific Northwest landscape. And also motifs taken from historical objects of art and design related to my Chinese heritage, mostly. Pattern, decoration, abstraction, multiplicity, and color are very important to my visual thinking and making. Okay. But I'm going to start my lecture with a project that sits adjacent to my painting and printmaking practice. It is a project that was an installation for the Portland Biennial in 2016, and it was about my family's Chinese-American restaurant in Wisconsin. So I have 2 images here. That's me and my sister and my mother in one of our first restaurants that we opened when we immigrated to the U.S. I was born in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, and came here when I was 4 years old. So I do retain some of the language, but I never learned how to read and write, to my regret. But this was the first restaurant, and like many immigrants, my father came for graduate school at University of Wisconsin-Madison and stayed to raise a family, and we entered the restaurant business because there was already a community that could help us get started in the business. They were very young, maybe 20, 21, 23, very young, and very inexperienced, and I think we pretty much almost went bankrupt with the first restaurant. They bought everything new, which is never a good idea. I spent my childhood in a restaurant, working in restaurants, studying in a restaurant, and it is a type of family business that really isn't a viable business model anymore. So there's a lot of history and a lot of memories in that space that I find very fascinating. That's also really connected to just stories of diaspora and immigration. They learned very quickly and moved on to different restaurants, and we would move to smaller towns with essentially no other Chinese restaurant, no competition. But that did mean in the 80s in Wisconsin that we were the only Chinese family in town, or the only non-Germanic Scandinavian family in town. And we often moved to a city next to water, with a big fortune, like a paper mill town. And we finally settled in a small town called West Bend in Wisconsin. It's about 25,000 people. It's pretty boring. This restaurant is really the restaurant that sits, one of the restaurants that sits the most strongly in my memory, and it was located in a small strip mall on a main street next to the Blockbuster, which I didn't know, the video store, and the liquor store. I think there's one Blockbuster left in Bend, Oregon. I think the only one in the country, because Oregon is like that. We'll hang on to it. You'll see like you can see the reflection of the Cocktails Delivered neon sign for wintry landscape and how quite flat and dusty it can be. It's very cold there. And also the inside of the restaurant. This is just the front room and the back room connected by a long hallway. It was lit with very low soft lights, which was essentially the dominant lighting design of the time, like low enough so you can't see what you're eating, type of, and very romantic and moody. Over the years, I really think of this as my mother's restaurant because over the years she would move things in and out and start filling with objects and carrying different things together from all over the place. Ornamental objects, strings, thrift store paintings, home and garden decor, from the local store, Buddhas, Yatra figurines, antique knockoffs. She had a friend that made corn husk dolls because it was a very American arts and craft. And also glass ornaments, blown glass ornaments, hand-painted, everything is in there, hand-painted teapots, some real Chinese antiques, like real antiques, collectible art objects in the kitchen dot altar, and a goldfish tank for good fortune. So you can see that it starts getting more and more dense. She started bringing more stuff into the restaurant, and then she would start carrying things together. Like at this side, the peacock feathers next to the peacock painting, this, it's like 3 Chinese dancing figures on top of this wallpaper that was left over from the previous restaurant, and I think that was like 1920s, blackbirds or something. So to me, the restaurant is a site that really represents the assimilation and acculturation of my family, where Chinese and Germanic and Norwegian American culture, which is what was in the region, what dominant in the region of Wisconsin, really kind of mixed, juxtaposed next to each other. They were very, unconcerned with like his history or cultural context. Everything was just kind of jammed up in the restaurant. And it really did reflect my mother's taste, her curation, her shopping, her shopping mood at the time. And I often, I left home, but I often look back upon that place when I went to visit, and really thought about all the cliches and visual tropes of an exotic Far East that she would put together in a restaurant, because after all, it is a business. And so you're really drawing people and you're selling them essentially a fantasy around like Chinese food too. And so it really does have a sense of like the Orientalist fantasy meets the American Midwest type of mood. And I think the irony of it all is that I had left the country at a very young age. So for me, in some ways, this is a lot of my culture becomes filtered through this space, which is already no longer attached to the native homeland that my parents understood. And every year, my language, my memory is more and more like faint. And Wisconsin, I don't know what it's like to school there now, but back then, it's even in public school, you attended pilgrim-like pageants and plays, Christmas carols, nativity scenes. We always put on a Christmas play. And my family, we were raised in a Buddhist tradition, so a lot of it was very completely not understood by me or my family. And in fact, it wasn't until I left for college that I realized that it's quite difficult to understand European art if you actually have very little understanding of Christianity. And so that was very, when I went to college, I actually took a lot of classes in Western literature, Western history, and also philosophy, simply because I realized I didn't understand a lot of the paintings I was looking at and that I really was attracted to. Because a lot of symbolism, the history, it was just so much information for me to understand when I wasn't raised in that kind of tradition. Here's another little corner, which I love. It's this Chinese doll that my mother picked up, and a friend of hers was an oil painter, created a still life, and painted this like Chinese still life scene. And then the whole thing gets placed in the restaurant, right next together, and essentially collapse next to each other. There are many, many moments like that in there. And then here's a long hallway going down to the back room. Here's the back room where she had put screens together. A lot of these are not really anything Chinese. She just picked up at a garden store and looked vaguely, Asian. So the restaurant, like my family, any Asian family in town, was very different from the dominant Asian region. But we were also, because we had been there for 20 years, it was also very much a part of the community. Because you lived there for so long, the town is small, you know everyone. And it was also a pre-digital age, everybody had phones. Yeah, you wrote letters still. People came to the restaurant for their anniversaries, their birthday celebrations, their graduations, their holidays, their work lunches. Families who had adopted babies from China would bring their children to our restaurant because it was the only touch point they had to the country or the culture. And that always really gave me some, really touched me. And so it was just a very, very interesting place. And I think the restaurant site has so many stories because there's also the kitchen and actually all the ways of immigrant workers that come to this space that is, it's like a forever project. So I just want to give you a little bit of background leading up to the Portland Biennial. Michelle Grabner was the curator of the Portland Biennial in 2016, and she had a vision to place a number of artists in far-flung locations all across Oregon, and small towns and atypical spaces. They weren't gallery spaces. She proposed 2 sites for me. I was paired with Crow Shadow Institute of Arts near Pendleton, Oregon. And let's see if I can. I'm not sure I know how to read this, but Crow Shadow Institute of Arts is a nonprofit that is located on the Confederate Tribes of the Latilla Indian Reservation. And it was started by Jim Labrador and another artist who sort of creates something that could be a real generator for the community. And over the years, led by lead printer Frank Jansen, they also developed an incredibly strong publishing and printmaking program where they would invite artists like Wendy Red Star and other artists to produce an edition. So it was really an amazing and very meaningful connection for Michelle to connect me and Crow Shadow. I took my students there and met the printer, and he brought the prints, and he showed us, the entire print shop. And we we saw some of the works that were there. We also had the honor of going to see Jim's studio. He's a really brilliant painter, and he has this amazing studio on a reservation, and he does show his house in a lot of collections in Oregon. So I can't even describe the studio. It was like immense, and it was really monumental and amazing. At the same time, she also suggested this building, which was a historic theater that's under gut renovation. And really, because during the studio visit, I had made some comment that my mother had retired, we liquidated a restaurant, and on a whim, I had asked her to ship me all the objects and contents and random decorative things into a shipping container and send it out to me in Oregon, because I had a very, very, very vague idea that I was going to do an art project with it. But I'm not a sculptor. I don't make installation. It was just an impulse that seized me, and she did. And I think she interpreted my request very broadly and sent many, many random things to Oregon in this 9x10 shipping container that I still have. It's been 5 years. But I don't know if I can give up the stuff. So she said, well, do you want to do something? Here's this theater in the lobby. You can't really have an audience in there because it's not safe. But there are windows and doors, and there are these rooms, and you can experiment. So I said, sure, why not? Because why not? I returned, okay, there was no budget. So I think a lot about constraints and the logistics of things and how to make artwork within something that may be frustratingly limited, but I actually think you can use it to really create something unexpected for yourself in your practice. There was no budget. It was a 5-hour drive, 10 hours round trip. You could only get there by car. I had 2 young children. If my husband took care of them, then he can't help me install. So it was very complicated. So I thought, how am I going to do this? What am I familiar with? I'm familiar with printmaking and image making. So I returned to this image of the bar and thought about what could I share about the restaurant when I could not make what I had originally imagined, which was an immersive installation incorporating all the objects in the container. So this is the piece I made, and like I said, I thought about it as a print. It's a matrix, it's a digital matrix, so there are digital files that can be replicated. It was designed to be modular and flat pack, making it very, very easy to drive in a van and put together. I thought about screens and facades, very much how the original restaurant was transformed from a blank concrete box to a very layered visual experience. Cardboard was my main material because it's paper-like, easy to cut, easy to transport, inexpensive. The color was right. It could create a warm glow, but it was also very neutral, flat, and low contrast. And I also like just the content in the material. It's packaging. You store and pack objects up in it to transport or to just keep in the attic for a long time. And then it really allowed me to play with patterns. So the diagonal stripes I thought of as a rain pattern because it rains a lot in Oregon. But if you'll remember the first image I showed you, it looked very much like the walls that were in the first restaurant. And I also layered some Scandinavian patterns on the flip side. Because the theater was essentially unsafe to enter, I really thought that it essentially had to be a lantern, so that at the very least you could see it at night. And I also did think that that was kind of a funny, cliche, like a Chinese lantern glowing in the dark of a western town in eastern Oregon. It did really stand out in that town, so I think it achieved that. And it looked mysterious. It really had a mood of the low lighting of the restaurant. So I think in terms of the mood and the emotions, it hit the spot of my memory. And it also had the same feeling of being like an island in a town where everything around you is quite different. I also thought about long winter nights when you're a kid and you're tired. You go to the back room in the restaurant and just kind of lie in a booth with a tablecloth for a blanket. So anybody that grew up in a restaurant business, would have these memories. The installation is both abstract and illustrative. It's hard to tell, but the laser cut cardboard in the back is basically an illustration of the bottles and the glasses and a mirror reflection that was in that original photograph of the bar. It's quite stylized because in some ways it didn't have to be very refined. It could be quite, it was almost like crude and easy to see. And here it is glowing at night. Pendleton is a very interesting town. It's way out west in the high desert of Oregon, and it has one of the oldest roundup rodeos in the country. It also has a very historic play that they perform every year. Trying to think. People describe it as big trucks, cowboy hats, cowboy boots, but the wives that take their husbands to the opera. So that's how they describe it. And when we were there, well, I think we were there for the opening, there was a biker convention and a Pendleton festival. It's a very strange town. I mean, I love the town. I want to go back all the time. The installation way out west in Eastern Oregon, it also became a way that I could place like my family's personal narrative within the narrative of the history of Chinese immigrants in the U.S., which in the Pacific Northwest became quite violent in the early 1900s, and like in Tacoma, they drove their Chinese immigrants out they drove their Chinese community out by gunpoint in the middle of the night. And there is this history that's, Asians have been there for a long time, Chinese immigrants, and Japanese, but it's so violently disrupted over the years, and so I think you see it's not continuous in that way because of it. Here are the side rooms, and I didn't really, I put some lanterns up and played around. I think it was quite fun to just have these rooms that the stakes were so low because it was very dirty. You couldn't really see it. But I think as an artist, it was pretty fun because I felt like it didn't really matter. I could try something out and put stuff up and just see what happens. So I took some of the aluminum panels I printed and I curved them, put them in a box, put a base on it. Here's my young daughter helping me install because I thought of that one time. And then on the, what do you call those, theater window displays, I made lithographs. And they're pretty much the same lithograph in a gradient, but I repeated them. And so it is a pattern of a Chinese bronze mirror. I felt that it was important to have some sort of poster display in an area that would typically have a poster display, and it didn't sit behind glass. So it was another way to really draw people to the site. So here's my story with Jenny, our story. But Jenny is teaching the catalog had a section where Michelle Grabner wanted us to find someone that could connect with us and have us do a visit and ask us questions that might create a more dynamic, informal conversation versus a typical artist statement or a biography that we can include in the catalog. So of course I thought, oh, Jenny, like she's great, she's really interested in Chinese art and culture and history, and I was really grateful because she came in. I think you asked like 3 questions. They were very, very on point, and it pulled out a lot of ideas that I had into words. I didn't have the words for it before, but because someone asked me the question, I think this is something for those of you in the curatorial program, the art of the interview. It was incredibly helpful to me, and also as an artist, sometimes you're so fixated on making the work and reaching a deadline that you don't always, in the same span of time, always have time to sit down and think about it. So it was helpful to have it be very concise and succinct, but to hit all the key points about the content, about how the restaurant really spoke to, a kind of a longing or a sense of dislocation about my family, acculturation of our family into a different culture and how all that came together and really created our lives, and embodied a lot of our lived experience and how that could be done through visual form and through pattern and through actually color, the lack of color in this case, and through light. The risograph is where I really feel like I need to insert color. I want to talk about teaching here too because I teach printmaking. I did teach full time at that moment, and I have always had really incredible students, and they they help me out, and they really keep things together. So here I have a very dedicated group of students that came with me to Pendleton. They helped me install. They helped me prepare it. We went to the town, we had a great time together, we met people, they came back with me to the opening, we met Frank, we went to Jim Lavadore's studio, and I think that's really one aspect of teaching and doing creative practice that I really enjoy, where I can work with my students and really, outside the classroom, but in a space where they can help me put something together and learn a little bit about, well, in this case, what they learned was that it's very, very stressful to operate on a very tight deadline because I really had childcare in my mind. I said, we are going up there in 2 days, and we have to put this up in 1 day, and I have to go back and attend this event, at my kids' school. So that, and we did it, and I think, this is just this is the life of making and showing your work, and I think, again, you can really, you can plan and thrive on it, and I personally find it really helpful to use all these constraints and parameters to kind of pull myself together. Otherwise, I'm a very indecisive person, and I will never finish a piece, which I also really like too, and I'll talk about that later. So from here, in the same moving container, here's a picture of my mother, a different era when the hair is unbelievable for working. And my father, and for maybe many of you that came here and was given an English name. Here's our funny English naming story. Charles and Diana were very big at that time. And a friend of my mother and father, who knew more English, decided to give their English names as Charles and Diana. And it took me, it was years later that I realized that they were referring to, the Charles, and Diana was where they got the name. And my sister, my name is Johnny, and so I named Charlene because someone thought, she sounds very similar. And Joshin, Sherry. So I have Charlene is with me, but sometimes I have mixed feelings about what would I have picked if I had been older. Probably something very ornate too. So here I picked this photograph because my mother is wearing a chipa dress, which is a traditional Chinese dress, and she has several really beautiful dresses that were custom made for her in Taiwan before she left and came to the States. I always loved dresses, and I always loved the photographs of my mother when she was young. They were very romantic, of a different time. They really remind me of movies like Movie for Love, or Happy Together Days of Being Wild type of story. And it really is just something that was so inaccessible to me, both as a child, of a different time, and of a different country and a different culture. So I wanted to do something with those dresses. And I really, frankly, there was no critique. I really just loved the romance of the dresses, and I wanted to find that connection. But I didn't particularly, the body is very hard because I also would never wear the dress. They're very tight, form-fitting, very constricted, and I hate the collar. The dress, the collar is very tight. I took the dress and I photographed the dresses and constructed digital collages thinking about the landscape and about the body, and really thinking about movements such as cascading, folding, draping. The digital image was printed as a 4-color process, CMYK screen print on aluminum panel. So when I took the photographs of the dresses, I also folded and churned it, and the collage, sometimes you would see a scene, or puckered edge or a zipper is still kind of hidden in there. It's very repetitive, so you have to go up close to kind of find the zipper to see what's there. And I chose a halftone one because it could kind of replicate that color, but the halftone is essentially an illusion. It tricks your eyes and brain to fill in more information than it really contains. And this is actually another lecture I'm thinking about the halftone. Not the filter in Photoshop, but like the original halftone. The screen print halftone, and for me it really, printmaking, but particularly the flat tone, the screen print halftone, it flattens the original object and image, and it kind of really flattened that collage. And it did it both like optically and visually, and for me in some ways, that like as an analog to like culture. Cole here, I won't make it stand up by half. Cole was my student that took screen printing class with me, and he is also right here, my assistant at the time that saw me. I was very pregnant for like two pregnancies, and I think it's very hard to print when you're pregnant, especially a large scale. So Cole is there, and he really helped me. And here's an image for those of you that aren't familiar with CMYK. You break it down into 4 colors, yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. The inks are mixed with different levels of transparencies, and the halftone are different dots in varying shapes and sizes and varying concentrations of densities. So when you print them on top of each other and they're very well registered, it's going to create a full color, what seems like a full color image. It gives you value and tonal range, but it is not, like I said, a true continuous grayscale or tonal range. That only exists in like photogrammetry or other types of processes. So this really is almost like a illusory or deception, very much sort of painterly in that way, I think, but printed. I don't know if anyone wants to put me here, but we did, and I'm forgetting to speak, but we had a lot of very superstitious printmaking moves at this point, because they don't, these are not printed in multiples. They are printed in one shot. If you don't register it well and you mess up, you gotta wipe the whole thing out and start over. And I think that's sort of the labor and the high stakes of printmaking at times. So sometimes it would take, I don't know, like an hour to set up, and you have your lucky charm, and you'd hope that everything is going to go right for you. So I wanted Jenny here because we were already did the catalog and had a studio visit. She said, "Oh, I have dresses from my mother that were also custom, made for her." And I thought that's great because I needed new. I wanted to work with different patterns, and I thought it'd be interesting to work with ones that weren't from my family. And we made our friend wear them and model them in the dark. I'm not a photographer, but I wanted to do like a mood for love thing. And so she walked up and down these really successful 3-degree weathers in Oregon, and had all these photographs of her that maybe is a photographic series. And I think she's probably very disappointed what I did with them at the end after all that. I basically abstracted it again and made so this dress is from Jenny's family. And in this case, I did make a print that kept the form of the dress, but I compressed it between a repeat of the floral pattern. I extracted and made a repeat pattern, and the line pattern again is taken from a bronze vessel. It's called red dress, and I just I like how it's streaming and it's trapped. And it seems as if it has volume, but it's very, very compressed at the same time. And here's another one, and here I'm really thinking about cascading, the waterfall in Oregon. It's cascading down the length of the dress. And this one actually has a lot of zippers. I don't really have detail, but lots of zippers and seams kind of flowing down. I put it, I guess I realized now I'm looking at this, I should have taken it from an angle, but it's leaning, and it's displayed on a redwood ledge. Because I was thinking about displaying objects, like in a restaurant on shelves, and I was thinking about displaying a dress as an object or a vessel. but also just about the Pacific Northwest landscape, like a cascaded waterfall, and redwood.
Are these all screen prints?
All screen prints, yes, yeah. And this one, this is on aluminum. It's quite large. It's 49, 50 inches by 36 inches. So it has to be printed in parts, and it becomes pretty technically tricky because you have to, the registration is hard. And it's very disciplinary hand printing it. Here's another one. And again, it's training. These are very landscape like. This pattern is very much like a Japanese kimono type of silk pattern. Do over here. I think I have to speed up this lecture. Here's one where it has an acrylic laser cut screen layered on top of a happily produced CMYK because I wanted it to be ghostly, kind of like an incomplete memory of thought. Here's a view of my studio. And then I'm just going to show really quickly some prints that I made because I want to get onto later work where I was combining found objects from, I put the information here, like 18th century tapestry. I was looking at National History and Expert Report Art, and I just really thought they were both like really beautiful. And I think from my eyes, I couldn't get over how they seem really racist. And so much better they are, and I don't know, I just wanted to like take it and print it and have it. And then the second one, I layered a photograph of a mother nursing a baby over a pineapple plantation tapestry. But this impulse didn't last long because I don't really think I'm interested in working with. I don't really want these images as part of my work. And here's another one where I took a French 18th century textile pattern and flipped and mirrored it and had laser cut screens, which is again a bronze pattern, but I doubled and added a drop shadow. So everything in here is doubled and mirrored in a shadow of each other. And the screens it's literally a screen. You can move it around into different things. It's very flat. So I thought it would be fun to make my own painting with a screen of it and have it be super adult. Here's a really, really large, like 16 inches, 5 by 4 feet painting, but it's screen print on a aluminum panel. And I thought of this as a self-portrait. It's called A Vessel for Mist and Morning Rain, and it's about my life in Oregon. I used sort of a base as sort of compositional structure, and I have a lot of images of pebbles, clouds, boilers. Some of them are made by swimming ink washes, some of them are photographs of me holding and spilling the base in my yard, but I took it all through the screen print halftone, so it could be like one very flat image. Here's another one I made that's also as large. I loved it when I made it, but I didn't like it when I put it up because it looks like a coffin or a grave to me, or like dead bugs, and that was like too much to look at, so it was very big too. But it's still really, really beautiful because those rocks in the center are very satisfying. And then the pattern next to it is actually the floral pattern repeated. So there's lots of nature imagery. And here's another one on a bronze pattern over a swirl. It's I was working with an automotive painting shop at this time, and I would take my paintings there and they were like drops and sort of coating on it. So it would be really shiny or iridescent or whatever it is that we wanted. It had a very particular slick patina to it. I'm going to go through this next session really quickly, but I do want to say that it's actually a very important part of my practice. I make mixed media, I draw, and do pastels all the time. I'm not going to focus on it in this particular lecture because it's not enough time. And here I use printmaking as a way to put appropriate imagery from different places and translate it to the medium of print, and then put it back into these fantastical landscapes that I would create. They're very ambivalent. I use cutting. This is etchings that I cut out on thin fountain paper. All the forms on that side are handmade paper that were made through molds. I love handmade paper because really the shape is like the shape. You don't cut it. how you make the paper is the form that it can be in, and when you paint in the pulp, it's embedded into the material. So these are, I didn't even know, I just make a lot of these, and I always, I guess I make them, put them away in my drawer, but I have a lot of materials I generate, and I just like being imaginative and creative and thinking about landscape and stories and making them really layered and visual. This is another one, thinking about hair and tide pools. The hair pieces are really funny. They're like from mock-up. And they look like tails, and all these are paper flower shapes. And I do love like the amorphous quality of handmade paper next to the very sharp look of the etching. And here's another one that's a mixed media screen print and woodcut. And I really was just thinking of a big pile of fruit because there's so much berries in Oregon. But also I love the Renaissance painting by like Giovanni Garzanini. She would paint all these beautiful bowls of figs on vellum paper. Mainly because as a woman she had to paint those subjects. Here's another piece of handmade paper. It's in my little party. And I do a lot of plein air painting, especially during pandemic, because it's there, it's in your backyard, and you can draw anywhere. Because I can do it with my children. Pen and ink can be very meditative. And in this piece, I was trying to capture this particular quality of light in Oregon, where it's a little bit dark and gray, but quite brilliant, and it happens in winter months when it rains. And the light sort of emanates from the moss and the light from the rock. It's a very particular kind of light, and that's what I wanted to evoke in this drawing. And this is just a jungle of weeds, deep in a pandemic. I made this drawing. Planted some flowers and stared at it for weeks. On my front yard in May. And then back to printmaking. So here's a really quick printmaking. Here are the main things I love about printmaking. You make an image on a matrix and you transfer it onto another surface. And so it has a lot of ideas embedded in about copies of copies. It's never really like an original unless you consider it a matrix, but a matrix is not actually an image on the print. And you can replicate it. It's about reversal. You can take multiple impressions from one inking. So we do this process of ghosting, where every subsequent impression becomes fainter and fainter and fainter. Here's another piece. Oh, I'll show this to you. I'm going to miss my boyfriend. Sorry. There's nothing more exciting than pulling the print off a stone. This is a lithography, stone lithography. It once was the height of technological printing, but no longer. So I create blocks that are very modular form, and here, you can see all the motifs I had in the past that I really, or I still work with, but I really greatly abstracted them and reduced them, and I kept simplifying them more and more, and I was trying to create modular blocks that could give me multiple, infinite variations. And I also realized that I reduced it so much that it became greatly freed from whatever source I had taken from. They're just like dots, flowers, dots, ovals. And I do love putting them in. I approach it on the press in a very improvisational way. I don't have a plan. I go in and I print it and I print the next layer. So it's incredibly generative process for me. Color, infinite variations on a set of blocks. And what I really love about this is also, again, taking the set of constraints, the press, the scale, the blocks, the modular, the inflexibility. There's a limit to its flexibility when you design something modular. And I love reaching that stage where I really feel like the limits, I don't know if love is the right word, I love that stage where I feel the limits of my creativity and the limits of the block and the press. And I think there's nothing interesting I can do with the circle again. But then you hit the next stage, and I think it opens up again, and I feel really, I feel a rush of creating my imagery. So here's just process photographs and random places where we get ideas for color. You can see how like these blocks, these gold blocks inside, actually come together and make a gold chain. And then I put them in different combinations and different variations. So one can make me think of a swampy pond, and another one can make me think of a spring garden. I have a lot of these, and they're very iterative, so titling is really like, they started doing like 4 letter titles. I think it was just 1, 2, 3, 4 would be best. Like this one, I don't know, I called it Hum, but I probably thought it was, in my head, my working title was Bug. Or I the entire time. But I think that's not the point. It's just I love playing around with color and trying out different color combinations and transparencies and really allowing the mistakes and the unexpected possibilities that happen to move you forward. And I think this happens with printmaking because there is that moment you don't quite know what you're doing entirely until you lift up the paper. So from these blocks, I started making these paintings because I was given a public art commission for this very large 30-foot wall and a new dining and residence hall. And I thought, and the east wall, the white wall. And I thought it was a really great opportunity to try something that I hadn't done before, which is make something super big for public space. It freed me up to just keep it very basic. I thought, I'm going to do it about food. And I made these really giant paintings about food, and they are probably my highly designed. I don't think I've ever been so decisive and design-oriented until I made these paintings. But they're also I learned a lot from the wood blocks, so they're very influenced by my wood block friends. Here is Hot Pot, for anybody who loves Hot Pot, as I do. And I have, not the meats and seafood, but at least I had all the vegetables in the Hot Pot. These are very big. They're like 7 by 6 feet paintings, so Hot Pot. And it was very freeing to just say, I'm going to make a painting about a hot pot. I'm going to put bok choy in it, and some lotus, some mushrooms, and also play around with pattern and decoration. This is soup, so it is designed as a repeat pattern. You can keep printing this infinitely, and I think it would make a really fantastic wallpaper or, packaging paper. But it also makes a great painting, and I could swap out the different foods depending on what I want to eat. So I had my assistant Izzy at the time was Korean, and we had a lot of fun because so many things are common between our cultures, but they were so different. From color choices that we have to foods that we would talk about. Here is, the Asian display cabinet with the ginseng, some gold chains, some bunny for my kids' room, some giant garlic, cabbage, and some alien bulbs. Then I made some moon cakes, and this is just a repeat moon cake pattern with something like mountains and clouds and moon cakes, cascading, going on forever. And here, this is one of our earlier designs, and I don't really know if it has a logic. I just put a bunch of moon cakes on it and made some moon float. It looked cool, and I do like them because I think it really hits kind of a cartoony moonscape. And I made the eggs in the middle glow, and they also, the weave in the bag is also imagining as if they were sitting in the basket. And then the pattern inside, the tops of the moon cake are actually different phases of the moon. And then I took some of the design elements and output them as blocks, and I made a series of very organic, soft prints and put them on the east wall. So here's just my assistant Justin Boggs and I. We are painting. It was a very strict deadline. Once I designed it, we were painting those paintings essentially in maybe a majority in a week, maybe tops 2 weeks. So it was a very long day, and we were super focused. And we did do it with taping and vinyl and a very strict plan. And I mapped out all the colors based on Pantone chips that I wanted him to follow. And my ask for him when I interviewed him, hired him, is that he had to paint verbatim, based on the information I gave him. And I knew that he could do it because he had been working as an in-house mural painter for Nike and painting very, very giant walls with a very small team. And so even though he didn't have the same word for it, when I essentially described what is like a Renaissance cartoon and transparent drawing, he understood how to do that. Or when I said, I want you to like hit this color and I need it to pop a little bit, he could do that too. So this is just us working together in a painting, and I like the yellow of the nails. I thought the nail polish was a great color, but I couldn't quite get it with paint. And then here, I think this is very satisfying. Peeling tape off the paint. So you can see that is a very, very thin piece of vinyl, and you can get a really fantastic detail if you're very precise. So that one, here's a close-up of it. Justin told me, I was not tracking, but he claims that we mixed over 200 specific colors. I was not sure. I felt like maybe that was a little too much, but that's where we landed. Over two, I got very particular. In the mooncake painting, there was probably 6 different pinks, and they were very close to each other. But he hit every single color just right. Because I thought it did, the pinks are very far away and they're very big, but I do think like being very specific about your color choices makes a huge difference about how it projects itself across the room. And this space in particular, so I'm always very shocked by that. I think about a lot about culture, particularly right now, and I often think about, because I've decided, I was realizing recently that actually it's very easily lost, from one generation to the next. I don't read or write, I don't cook. I look Chinese, and my family is Chinese, so I think, where is the point that in my own identity that, what do I want to pull out and what do I want to pass on to culture? And I think about that in my work. And I'm always being playing around with this question that you're asking me with no particular answer. And so recent work, though, I have been more focused on Chinese art objects because I wanted to be specific in that way. But I was also looking for something new, which is why I thought making work around food was exciting, because I also really want to talk about, influence of maybe like design, Warhol, and where to print. Also, my children are very, very Japanese, Chinese, Jewish. And they speak Chinese, they speak Spanish. So this idea of culture, what you pass on, what you retain, what you have to actively work to hold on to is very present in my mind right now, and very present in my work, and what I'm trying to think about. I was way more interested in working with ideas about cliches and kind of Asiatic tropes, but I am not so interested in cliches and tropes in the same way anymore. I'm really looking for new ways of making work that can contain these references, but look fresh and influence the future.
This is not really about your painting, but I'm more curious about how you get started in this career. Because for us, as designers and artists, it's not that every couple of pieces have to start. It's but my question is how do you get your work out there? How do you become successful? What do you do? Do you just enter competitions? Do you just post it on Facebook Marketplace? I don't know how you get started.
I don't know if, I feel like the world has changed a little bit with digital media, so I may not be the best person to answer in that space, but I understand this question. I think that when I was young, I left my town and I moved to a city that had a lot of energy, and enough energy and enough an economy that I could get a job. To me, it didn't matter. I basically worked for over 10 years in corporate America. So I had